Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So we're looking at the Crypto Weekly Analysis Volume 17. Pretty much we're going to give you an insight of what we're looking at for next week and compare our analysis from last week also. So with our Crypto Weekly videos, there's not really much that's happening on a week-to-week basis. So in terms of our bias, it's pretty much been the same. So what we looked at last week and pretty much the last few weeks or so was this drop off in the market. We're still expecting price to drop lower. I think it's still looking quite strong that there is potential price action to push lower. So again, I'm just going to move things along right now. Let me just push this lower. So I think last week we were roughly around here, and we can see that price has dropped off slowly, and we're still dropping. So for now, I'm not really looking at any bullish activity right now. I think for us, for now, I think what we could be looking at is this zone here at the 38k. If we can break this, this should be quite ideal for more bearish pressure to come into the market. If we take a step into the daily, we can see how strong these daily candles are, but pretty much they are dropping off. So it's quite unusual for price to be bullish right now, because we're not really seeing anything quite bullish right now. Obviously, we're just seeing price drop off quite rapidly, so we'll just have to see how much this can drop off. But like I said, we are looking at around the 30k to the 28k to drop into. So in terms of how we looked at last week, and we're getting closer, so that's fine. Pretty happy with that. So for this week, I'm just trying to see if we can continue, if we can get an inch more closer towards the downside, and if so, that will be a good opportunity. And if we can especially break that 38k barrier, that would be something quite significant, I think, in terms of bearish pressure and sentiment. So yeah, so like I said in previous videos, is that we carry this Bitcoin dominance theory towards the other pairs, so it has an effect to the other pairs. We should see a similar story in the other cryptos. So looking on the daily, we're pretty much seeing price drop off quite strong still. So we've had some bearish pressure. I'm still seeing more downfall opportunities here. So again, we're looking to target this blue line here, so at the 50 cents range. So we've still got more space to drop. So from last week we were roughly here, so we've had a significant drop this week. So obviously it's not looking good, but again, for us, we're trying to look at some buying opportunities at the cheapest price point possible. So I guess this is fine. And again, we're looking at price to drop a bit lower, so we're roughly at 95 cents roughly. We're just hovering around that range, but yeah, if we can get into the 50 cents, that'd be great. But yeah, we are pushing lower, so that's good to see. I'm liking that bearish pressure here, nice strength there. But yeah, like I said, as long as we don't get any massive bullishness, we should be fine to still continue to drop lower. So looking at Cardano, so we've actually had a little bit of a recovery here. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen here. So like I said, there is a possibility for price to potentially make a new high here, and then turn over. But again, it really just depends what's going to come from this. But essentially what I'm looking into for this pair is to see if we can still drop into the $1 zone. So I might as well draw this in here as a second scenario, where we look at something like this. So this scenario essentially just means that we're just going to drop off, but the first scenario that we've got here is a possibility of price making a new high before dropping off. So that's one thing to keep in perspective. So we take a look on the daily. We are pushing up quite aggressively here. There is a possibility, this is why I'm looking at the daily, and why there is a possibility of price making one more push up higher. is because this does look quite bullish, and the turnaround here, if we look on the 4-hour, does look quite bullish as well. So it could step up and make a new high. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But yeah, let's just keep all scenarios into perspective and come again next week and see what happens. So yeah, let's move on now. So Litecoin, like I spoke about, the most highlighted point from last week was this massive spike towards the upside, but it completely dropped off with pressure towards the downside. So that could be a an incentive for people to sell off. Who knows? But we can see price is selling off right now, so we are getting closer to that 3K mark. Essentially this blue line where we expect price to drop into, which essentially is this low. So we can see that there is a possibility of price dropping lower. So I think a significant zone would be this level here, so roughly at the 45K mark. If we can break this zone, there is more potential for price to drop lower into this zone. But yeah, let's just take a look at what happens this week. So we have been dropping off slowly, so that's good to see. Ethereum, we can see that there is a possibility of price pushing up higher, because we were quite cautious of how high price did get, as it nearly did make this new high, but it actually has dropped off quite a lot since last week. So roughly I think we were around here. So we can see prices dropped off rapidly. I think over the last week news wasn't really good for the crypto market, but again, this is why we expect this is why we look at better buying points at cheaper points, rather than speculative buying because we think that this is the bull run. But again, like I said, anything can happen here. So what I'm looking into is for price to potentially drop off and make a new low. But again, we might as well talk about the two other scenarios still. So we could have price to break the high, which is the all-time high, and then we can look at a retest for continuation. But this has to be a strong break. This third scenario and the final scenario is price makes the break towards the upside to manipulate this point, and then we'll reject it, and then we could see price to drop off. So in terms of, like I said, the buying points are going to be below the 1700 barrier, potentially into 1500. That's where I'm possibly looking into, but again, we'll see where we can where price turns out next few weeks or so. So that's where I'm pretty much looking at. Dogecoin, again, I am looking for price to make its way to the downside. I might as well drop this zone in. So this red line here, I'm looking for price to pretty much drop lower. So we have, I think we were around here from last week. We've dropped quite significantly, another 5 cents. That's still quite big, but we are getting very close now to the 15 cents region. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen if we can actually break this, because then I think the crypto market is going to get a bit more interesting over the next few weeks after that. Well, across the board, obviously, if we get all price actions to break those lows that we've been talking about. But yeah, so moving on to our last one is EGLD. So we spoke about this as a possibility of price to make a drop and then to potentially recover. And as a little quick scalp, you could be looking at price to make a new high. So essentially, might as well draw it in here. So essentially, we're looking for price to possibly make a new high, but we can see how price has already reacted to dropping. It's kind of made a bit of recovery. So one or two things can happen is that we could get price to drop lower and then push up higher, or this is going to be the run towards the upside that will make the new high. But again, this is not the long-term buying opportunity that I'm suggesting. We're looking at price to do one or two things. So taking a look on the daily, so this is where we're thinking of happening, or what we think is most likely to happen, is for price to break towards the downside, have some sort of maybe there's some sort of scalping opportunity towards the upside where we break it up into the high. So at 305, 306. From this point onwards, this is where it's going to be key. We're either going to find some sort of rejection in which we break towards the downside, which will tie in with the Bitcoin dominance where Bitcoin crashes, and then this would be your buying opportunity where we expect price to, you know, drop lower, and hopefully it could do this into 50. But the second scenario is that price makes the high but then drops but stays within this range from the $50 towards the whatever the high is, so if that makes sense. So from here to the new high, so let's say this is the new high, price could just make a slight retracement, and then we could be looking at a buying opportunity within that range, and then it completely rallies towards the upside, in which we expect then price to make a lot of new highs, in the sense we could see a lot of price action moving higher. But yeah, like I said, we just have to pretty much wait and sit back and see what happens, really. So on the 4-hour time frame, one or two things we could expect from next week is we'll either get price to drop off, so something like this, and then rally towards the upside, or we'll get price to rally towards the upside, as this is the bullish pressure. So one or two things can happen. I probably would most likely think this opportunity, this will happen. You could look at a scalping opportunity if you really did want to, but I doubt you should do that, just in case this completely, you know, continues to drop some drops. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this. But they're just some ideas that we could expect on the 4-hour, on a very short term scale. Long term, on the grand scheme of things, I'm looking at one of these two plays here, in the sense where we'd be looking at buying at the $50, or, you know, at the in between this low and the new high, if it creates that new high. Okay, so that's pretty much all for this week. Not so much to cover, but again, it's good to see that majority of the pairs are dropping lower and lower, and that just essentially means that we're seeing cheaper and cheaper prices. So soon I think that the crypto market will be a bit more interesting in terms of, you know, looking at a buying opportunity and holding on to it. But yeah, we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. So guys, I do appreciate your time for listening. We do have a trading group that you can join. That is Forex only though. But again, I'm happy to answer any of your crypto questions. Just leave them in the comment section below of this video. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So guys, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all in our next week's video.